So, in this next video, I want to respond to Margie, who said that I'm always referring to my positions as truth, or true or false, but that being able to distinguish between fact and opinion is one of the core underlying engines of the Poop Gathering Festival and of critical thinking. So her point being that I'm misusing the term true, and then she impacted a bunch of stuff. But I'm not misusing the term true because, look, there are positions that are I don't know, but when I'm claiming that something is true or false, it's generally a specific warrant or a specific impact or a specific point. For example, one thing I insisted was true was that the that World War II, the enlistment of people into the army, and that arms manufacture were not New Deal programs. That's true, and the alternative is false. So, I mean, no matter how you want to skew it, a lot of times it's simple facts like that I'm asserting are true. But beyond that, even, my whole position is that the arguments I'm making are true because they are making claims about relative strength, not because the positions. I'm not attached to specific positions. Again, this is something that I tried to address a little bit last night. Everybody assumes I'm a super libertarian, whatever. I'm not necessarily. I mean, for one thing, I believe that there should be property tax on real estate. I believe that there ought to be restrictions on land monopolies. I believe that the federal government ought to be engaged in environmental regulations. All these things are not libertarian positions. I'm pro-life. That's kind of a split position. I don't know if it's libertarian or not, but and I am. I mean, the thing is, I'm first and foremost interested in policies that improve the country, and so what I would like to do is find ways to make compromises with existing paradigms to improve the country in ways that don't do harms to other people's rights, with the best of our ability to do so, to respond to some of the serious injustice that exists in the status quo, to deal with the fact that there are so many people who are incarcerated for drug crimes, and to deal with the fact that you've got police departments, for example, that that are not subject to the same laws as regular citizens. It's obscene. So those sort of things are basic, obvious stuff. When I say, is it true that the police ought to be subject to the same laws as citizens? Well, again, it's truer than the alternative, and it's true that it's stronger than the alternative as an argument, because the alternative is we get rid of equal protection of the law, which necessitates accepting aristocracy, or to prove that in fact this does not constitute unequal protection of the law, except it so obviously and straightforwardly does that to claim otherwise is to utter a falsehood. So, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. These things aren't positions. They're true and false, because if it is a position that has something less than a factual assertion of truth, then it's going to be a truth statement about the relative strength of the arguments, and or about the necessary disadvantages, advantages, etc. that come along with something. It's going to be mechanism based. So no, you're not right, Margie. Mar de la Mayo. Marjela Mayo. I'm not going to call you Marjela Mayo. How do you think about that? Oh, Margie? Now see what you got yourself. Where you're like, God damn, that motherfucker came up with DE, huh? Alright. Oh, okay, Ellie says, don't we have to have different rules for police? Well, why? I mean, I understand that there's going to be some, there will be certain behaviors that a police officer has to engage in on duty, okay? So, whereas even if a person, I mean, there really shouldn't be any difference. The only reason a police officer should ever put their hands on somebody is if they pose a threat to themselves or others, or have been accused of a crime and gone through the proper legal processes to get an arrest warrant and stuff like that. There really isn't any other. There's no difference. I mean, police officers should not be engaging in assaults. They should not be engaging in murders. They should not be engaging in any of those behaviors. And I do understand that it's going to be a little bit more challenging sometimes for us to tell if a police officer was engaged in an assault or was engaged in a necessary use of force. But a lot of times it's not that difficult to tell that it wasn't necessary. And the problem I have is, number one, police officers, like, if it turns out later on that they go, okay, well, yeah, let's strip him of his police powers, let's prosecute him, then the police officers who were on the scene should have arrested him at that time, because they would have arrested you or me. There's no reason to presume that the police officer is more innocent than you or I are presumed innocent. And the other officers saw him in commission of this crime, and he shot this other person or whatever. For example, the guy who was, I forget what his name was. He was lying on the ground and he got shot with his hands up, and there was an autistic guy next to him. That guy, Charles Kinsey, that's what his name is. The cop who shot him should have immediately been arrested. Should have immediately been arrested for attempted murder. On the spot, right away. Otherwise, there's no reason to think the police officers enforce the law against themselves. So why should I respect it when they try to enforce it on me? Well, I mean, here's the thing. Anytime we try to make little fudgy areas for police officers, every single time somebody's guilty, they go right there. So cops have this different standard by which we can determine whether or not they were justified in using lethal force. And it's kind of crazy. It's fear for their life. So all they have to do is convincingly tell people that they're scared, they were scared, and they have a license to kill you. You don't have to be armed. You don't have to have done anything. You don't have to have actually posed any threat. As long as the officer can believably claim that he was afraid for his life, he can kill you with no consequences. Now, even if we could trust officers so much as to believe that their emotions were enough to justify murder, well, I don't think we would still want to trust officers' emotions enough, because scared people sometimes are scared for good reason, sometimes aren't so scared for good reason. Being scared isn't a reason to pull the trigger on a gun. Point it at somebody and pull the trigger. It's not a reason to do that. And if you're getting away with that because you're scared for your life, quote unquote, I mean, equal protection under the law means if you're coming up to me, cop, and I'm scared for my life and I've got good reason, you're armed and have a history of violence. And same rules have got to apply. Why is it that my fear for my life doesn't justify me shooting you. Is it because I'm not a cop? Well, but we're both human beings. We both get scared for our life. And aren't you supposed to err on the side of caution such that you'd rather die yourself than kill an innocent civilian, as you call them, civilians, citizens? It's your fellow citizens you're killing. And who pays those bills? The city of San Diego just paid $1.4 million. City of Cincinnati just paid something like $6 million. It comes out of the taxpayers. Cops don't even get anything. Nothing even happens to them. So, you know, I think a just America would see, I don't know, 20% of police officers in prison. Every single one of them that ever fudged on anything. Because, look, you can't, if you are empowered to enforce the law and you abuse that power, that should be the very worst, strictest punishment should be reserved for that. Prosecutors, 80% of them probably need to be in jail. They have no respect for basic human dignity. They don't view their fellow citizens as worth anything. They're just chips that they can cash in to advance their career. So, I mean, I am not opposed to law enforcement in principle. I am opposed to what law enforcement has become. And it has become what it has become because it has been directed to the wrong ends. It has been directed towards revenue generation through ticketing. That's not what those laws are supposed to be for. We are the citizen democracy, running our own government, right? Why are we doing this to ourselves? Number two, they've been directed towards enforcing victimless crimes, like drugs and stuff, that nobody get hurt except for the person the cops fuck with. That person gets hurt. Nobody else gets hurt. So, because of those two things, they necessarily engage in a lot of evil shit. If they weren't doing those things, if they weren't prosecuting victimless crimes, and they weren't doing a whole bunch of traffic shit all the time, looking for reasons to pull people over and check them out, if they weren't doing that stuff, we wouldn't be having these problems. And everyone would respect the police. If all they did was actually go after criminals who did real crimes where you call them and say, hey, I just got robbed, police, can you come over here and help me? If that's all they did, people would respect the police a great deal. We wouldn't need very many of them, but those that we had, we'd respect a great deal. So, my position on the police is, it's an unfortunate thing that's happened to policing in general, that I think most citizens have lost most or all respect for law enforcement, and with good cause. So, I mean, I think it's unfortunate because it's not their fault. It's the poopy lawmakers' fault who passed poopy laws. Anyway, that was my little response to that. Thanks for watching Talking with Famous People. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese.